I'm going to present on a case study in the, I guess, an hour and a half we have got time. It's essentially focused on ryegrass. Is one of the main weed species, the great ability to evolve resistance. This is how it looks when we put out a pre-emergent herbicide application. We apply directly onto the seed, and then that's me in shorts, covering the seed after spraying, and then we water, and whatever emerges is counted as resistant. And yeah, before you get distracted, I give you the take-home message before you get a bit annoyed by the Southern Europe accent. So the message is, the talk is focusing on a case study I've done, really exciting results that I've obtained studying paraquat resistance in ryegrass. Chris has been mentioning this morning how we have these few initial cases of glyphosate and paraquat resistance, and that is the topic of my talk. Just to contextualize the results, I mean, this is the screening I do every year at UWA with lots of people helping me, casuals helping me to test a large number of chemicals, large number of options. At the bottom there you have the pre-emergent herbicides and post-emergence or foliar. We divide the resistance in two categories. Chris this morning presented essentially data only looking at that category where resistance is reflecting 20% or greater survival at the field rate. But essentially, resistance evolves first as a low resistance or reduced sensitivity where maybe it's not yet visible or a big issues in the paddock, but is always some wave of low resistance, developing resistance, whatever you want to call it, where survival in a pot trial would be 6%, 10%, 15%, and then gets established. And yeah, certainly we don't see whole zeros when we test a number of pre-emergent herbicides. The resistance is already there. Maybe the difference is between random surveys that doesn't pick up a signal until it's spread about 10–15% of the paddocks, versus this one are, for a number of reasons, all samples that have been sent in because they were suspected of something. There was something that was just not properly explained in a paddock situation. So, but I want to talk to you about this little problem when we spray shearquat, just a brand name of paraquat. Low level of resistance. I only received 3 samples in 2023, one by post, seedlings, a couple of seeds, and also a couple of samples in 22. They all came from WA, and yeah, it's a marginal problem. And but it was very clear when we sprayed paraquat that there was an issue. This is a great photo I took on a Monday morning. Those plants have been sprayed on Thursday. 2 liters of this product plus wetter, perfect kill all around them, but they were standing and surviving. What I've learned by testing these populations further is that generally when they become paraquat resistant, that is something that follows up a problem that occurred earlier, which is glyphosate resistance. So essentially those samples, and this is true for these 2 populations tested in 22, and the same is true for populations that I tested in 23. Essentially those ryegrass populations, on those ryegrass populations, the double knock failed. So a glyphosate application followed by a paraquat. So it's so easy to say double knock failed, but within differences between entomologists and pathologists and weed researchers, we all agree that the double knock, in whatever version you apply to a particular pest, is this pillar, is the fundamental let's say, truth that we all sort of believe that is one of the most effective measures in terms of chemical application to control or to mitigate resistance. And so this has failed. So I want you to reflect on the fact that one of the most important tools we have to manage resistance doesn't work any longer. You know, modeling has been done 20, 25 years ago, and the model predicted that this would have never occurred. 25 years later, there are situations where this has occurred. And so what I did 2 years ago, I spent essentially my Christmas break in a glass house because I knew that those populations would have be coming in early January. So I spent some time to work on a population that evolved in a vineyard in South Africa 20 years ago, try to see what would have worked, try to see whether there was Matino Complete coming into the market, a Bayer product, pre-emergent Bayer product that had some components of it, is a co-formulated product that some components of it interfere with light. Paraquat interferes with light. So one day I go for a run around Kings Park and I have this question popping around my head whether this new product would have mixed better with paraquat or glyphosate. So I had this question, I test on a paraquat resistant population, and I discovered something, and then I wanted to take this very concept to the field when those populations came. So here just to some information that I could gather that are sort of contextualizing what led to this population where the double knock has failed. And so there are some common features that relate to very much what has been discussed today. You know, repeated use of the same chemical, an environment that allows those plants to, you know, to reproduce and to set seed and keep the cycle going. And I tried to get some, you know, very primitive information on the epidemiological side of it. I mean, how many shots of glyphosate it took before we had this problem, and the fundamental question that we still don't know is that, well, once you get glyphosate resistance, how long is it going to take before you have a paraquat resistance problem? And again, it's very much sketchy. I had luck to meet with those South African agronomists that were dealing with this original problem in South Africa, and they said that once glyphosate failed, it took only 3 to 5 shots before they had a paraquat resistance problem, and maybe they were spraying big plants, and certainly also in this area that has now become a bit of a hot spot in WA. And this is the photo of one of the sites. Even when the double knock was applied, maybe plants were sprayed, you know, that were already into a developed tillering phase, and initially even low rates of paraquat, etc., etc. So, but all of this, I mean, I was not really satisfied with. I put together all this information, and still, you know, there was no anything new that we could have adopted, you know, next season, tomorrow, essentially, to manage these populations. This is a map showing that some of these samples come from the same area, and the farms are not very far apart. So maybe there's been a bit more movement of seed, or maybe just the conditions, the environmental features, high rainfall of the very area which is near Albany, so southwest of WA. They all come from the same area, and this is also an area I think that where red-legged earth mite is occurring. So, but again, I want you to reflect. You know, if this problem happens to one of your clients, or is going to happen on your farm, what would you do? You know, would you blame the agronomist? Would you blame yourself because you haven't been able to, you know, to advise your client properly, or you would immediately switch to glufosinate and try to stop seed set? And by the way, all of these have been done when this happened in 22, but none of them really work apart from the testing of resistance and characterizing. But to me, the fundamental question you should ask, and we should ask ourselves, I mean, what do? We stop using those two chemicals when resistance happened to both? And this is a question that we had no answer because we didn't know anything about it. We assume that resistance is resistance. So as soon as you hear it, you know, you are sort of at loss. And I want to just show you that is not that you need to drop both herbicides. And yeah, my take-home message is already hinting. Yeah, many companies actually contributed. And so thank you to all of them that across 2 years or 1 year, they contributed to pay for the cost of these field trials. And if you are working for a company and is not listed there, don't be shy. You just get in contact, chuck this $5,000 on the table. We're going to use them to do research next year. But essentially, we tested a number of options, standalones versus mixtures or double knocks or complex versions of double knocks. This is a very busy table. The common feature is that the first knock was glyphosate, and then there are a bunch of mixtures and then a bunch of double knocks use patterns and 2 columns of data. The challenge is for you to see where we get into the 90% control. The first column is the data I've collected in pots, control environment, reflecting identical treatments that I put out in the field. And these are for one of the sites that we identified in 22. And essentially, you can see that well, most of the glyphosate-based mixes do not deliver an exciting level of control, especially in pots. And even in the field, and that was only visual assessment of control, so you wonder whether the Overwatch had given the illusion to deliver more than what actually did deliver, etc. So, but essentially we kept at 80% control, while we started to get into the 90% control when we had the double knock, but in particular, where the second knock of paraquat was in a mixture with a residual product. And this is the absolute key of how to go forward and doing nothing different, but at least be aware that when you use paraquat in combination with that residual product, you have the absolute opportunity to deliver a high level of efficacy that potentially allow you to give glyphosate a rest. Because glyphosate resistance now, Chris presented quite scary data of 46% type of frequency in some areas of Victoria. I have found across many years that overall nationally the frequency of resistance sits around 10%, but still is 10%, is 1 in 10 paddocks where glyphosate potentially is going to fail. So and if the way of managing that is using paraquat, we need to make sure that when we use paraquat, we don't get into this resistance problem. And how to avoid that is to use paraquat in a mix with something. And I want to show you some photos of what did work better than something else. So this is the field. Is a drone shot taken by Steve Pettenon that visited the field with me in May 22. That is the untreated control. That was Roundup Ready canola. A bit of heterogeneous infestation because that is the fence line there, and so. But we put out a trial. We did what we could. Glyphosate didn't work. This is me with my iPhone taking a photo. Actually, it was an Android because the quality is very low. And then I went back and I worked at UWA just to reflect exactly what we did and see in a control environment. We have 2 populations last year, 4 reps. So glyphosate didn't work. You mix Overwatch and again, didn't really work, 50% efficacy at the very best. Matino Complete with glyphosate, yes, better, but nothing special, that at least visually. And then here you start to see something that provides greater level of suppression, and is where we started to test some glyphosate first, followed by paraquat mixed with a residual product. This is the same sort of use pattern, but instead of Overwatch, we had Matino Complete. And this is, I think, reflects the Terrador and Voraxo. So again, Chris touched on this concept of what the spike can bring to the paraquat or glyphosate to trying to chase ryegrass activity, and not very much when it is using in that use pattern there. This is a table where now the common feature is paraquat in the first knock. So remember, we have resistance to both, And now here, this is all the paraquat-based product, and here is much more, you know, something that is at least on paper or on a slide exciting. You know, the 95% type of control that, you know, gives at least the temporary illusion. The challenge is to take this to the field and make it work, given a lot of constraint in terms of rainfall or anything else that necessarily all the time lowers the level of efficacy. But definitely there is nothing wrong with the data, and so this is what could be at the very least achievable when you just simply drop for a second the glyphosate and work around paraquat and how to, you know, extract more efficacy out of it. So a few examples, yeah, in the field, again, same situations. You can see that already paraquat delivers greater activity than glyphosate. And again, this reflects probably, you know, the history of the herbicide use. You know, remember 40 years of use of glyphosate. So the level of glyphosate resistance is as big as you can possibly get. Then you switch to paraquat. So of course, you know, just assuming that the resistance reflects the number of applications, you know, there has been less applications of paraquat, and then, yeah, the opportunity is now to go further, try to study at the biochemistry level, you know, the resistance mechanism to one or the other, and see if, you know, at the biochemical level we understand that paraquat resistance mechanism is weaker than glyphosate. So yeah, the pictures keep on going, and you can see how good now all this level of controls looks, how promising it is. Yeah, and yeah, this was one of the winner, paraquat Boxer Gold. So yeah, essentially you know, whatever choice of the residual product you have the ability to expand the efficacy of paraquat. And again, yeah, these plots were the plots that this photo was taken about 4 weeks after the second knock was applied, and it was yeah, paraquat plus Boxer Gold, which was again very promising. And this was the paddock nearby where this resistance had moved into the crop area, and this was the untreated control, much lower density, but again, paraquat and Boxer Gold did the trick. So we were all excited. We thought that we have solved the problem, but again, in the meantime, I did a bit of noise around WA, and I received some funding so to keep the research going for 23, and yeah, we ended up on this fire break with yeah, probably the biggest, I mean, the most difficult site I've ever been. You know, high density, and essentially almost nothing did work more than 50%. It was a very difficult site. There was only one treatment number 27. We will delve now a little bit into it, and just comparing, you know, paraquat on its own versus this treatment number 27. So what was this thing? We tested 28 treatments. 27 was the second last. And so we started with glufosinate plus Terrador as the first knock, because again, all of these treatments, because I share lots of my imperfect science on Twitter, just to get feedback around the country on different weeds. And so, you know, there was this concept of watering ryegrass with glyphosate. So applying glyphosate, if you know that glyphosate resistance is extreme or very high, why you bother to keep going with the glyphosate just because the double knock has been designed that, you know, glyphosate is followed by a paraquat? Shouldn't we try something else? The problem is that, you know, glufosinate doesn't really work that well on ryegrass, because ryegrass essentially is partially tolerant, naturally tolerant to this chemistry. It seems that, you know, the activity of glufosinate can be increased by mixing a group 14 PPO, group G herbicide. So here the first knock was glufosinate and 40 grams of Terrador, and still, you know, to be very polite, it was quite pathetic, because not even the sensitive populations could be controlled fully. This was only 3 weeks after, so I waited. I know that the double knock should be applied within 2 weeks, but in pots, you know, and it was quite cold, it was June, I just wanted to extract the maximum efficacy. But the best part was that, yeah, again, you know, just those two populations, 4 reps, are glyphosate and paraquat resistant. Those 2 are glyphosate only, and this is the sensitive. So the second knock, yeah, it doesn't need much of an explanation in terms of what I had in terms of result. It was Sakura with paraquat with Voraxcor at 200 mils, right? And yeah, this worked 100%. So again, this was interesting because based on this, then I designed other treatment to just test, you know, paraquat and Sakura, or paraquat and Voraxcor, or other pre-emergent herbicides. And so one of the most exciting results in its also for its simplicity was essentially just the only one mix of paraquat Sakura could you know, deliver 98% control on its own. Of course, there will be the challenge for this to make this work in the field, because it needs a lot of water to be activated. You know, if you think about June in Perth, is where in Perth never rains, but in June and July it does. And so, you know, these pots have received at least 100 mils of you know, rainfall in terms of activations after the spray. So everything worked at its best. This was an interesting treatment in the field. Didn't really stand out as much, but in pots it did. And so and again, we wanted to test something that could be used, you know, in front of canola, so or other grain legume crops. So paraquat and raster, so propyzamide and paraquat was also really good. And this was another one that in 22 and in 23 did work really well, which is essentially amitrole mixed with paraquat at very high level of amitrole, so the twice as much grams of active per hectare compared to the paraquat. Paraquat is about 430, and the amitrole is 860. So when you have a lot of amitrole that on its own, I'm testing now all of these, you know, partners on their own, and absolutely, I tell you that, yeah, amitrole on its own is quite pathetic, but has the opportunity to be a true synergist when it's mixed with paraquat, and that's the beauty. And again, yeah, everything worked with paraquat. Again, same concept. What happens when you mix with glyphosate? And you can see this is one of the top most effective treatment, Matino with glyphosate on the same 5 populations. And yeah, you can see that you start to have survival everywhere, and Overwatch is no different, if not worse. And the Boxer Gold, again, this was interesting because, yeah, very little activity. Of course, there is some activity because you always have the residual suppression, and then the glyphosate takes care on the above ground proportion of the plant, but not what you want to have. So conclusions, if there is any. Yeah, use paraquat in a mixture. This is standard practice. It is nothing new, but it's good to know that you are doing the right thing. If you can drop glyphosate, think about, you know, your 6-7 year rotation type of scenario, and try to see whether you can save some of the glyphosate applications, just to, you know, try to prevent or delay as much as you can a problem. Lab and field research will continue, but we have no money, so that's great. But yeah, we can't, I mean, come on, when you travel 200 km with your Ferrari, Paul, you know, are you going to slow down if you see the cops down the road? No, you just keep going. So yeah, we have no money, but we will find the way to overcome this. And yeah, well, because we work very closely with a grower group that is based there, and you know, they saw us getting there to the field, try with them to co-struggle, so to try to solve this issue, try to see whether there is anything. So now they have sort of built a statue of bronze with my face and all of that. So, but they want action. They really want us to continue this type of work. They feel that is relevant. They feel that they are sitting on hot spot of this problem, and I'm going to receive more fence lines samples to test on in 24, and yeah, hopefully we can continue this work. Thank you for having me. If I still have some time when we ask, no, but we can open for questions, and there won't be any question. Thank you very much. But I just want to show you this video that essentially shows, you know, 2 pots sprayed with paraquat or paraquat plus something that didn't really work, and then the pots on the right hand side have been sprayed with paraquat and pyroxasulfone type of treatments. And of course, our bet is very much that that is the interaction of the two that kills the plant. It could be that just Sakura is enough to kill them. This is a time lapse. I took a photo every 5 minutes, and you can see this, the sun keeps on turning, or the earth keeps on turning actually. And yeah, the paraquat only grows and gets away, while when you have the residual component that eventually gets in, because it's washed through the roots, then the plants eventually dies. So I think that there wouldn't be any better, you know, fundamental type of research that should occur on weeds, because this has the potential to, you know, allow us to keep using the glyphosate and make glyphosate, you know, continued use, etc., and keeping exploiting the benefits. After this, happy to take any question, but as we said, there were no questions, so thank you very much. And
thanks, Roberto.
No questions.
One very quick question. We're running very late. Chris.
Very quick one. Credit to you, Roberto. Keep on doing your trial work and asking for permission afterwards. Did some trials a few years ago, very similar off fence lines, and we came to the conclusion that really glypho should be applied as a standalone, not mixing anything with it, because some of our common pre-ems, more so in the legume phase, when we mixed it with glypho, we were losing up to 40% of the activity on the knockdown of ryegrass. So yeah, it's almost a mirror image of what you're saying, that use paraquat and add something to it, whereas we're also saying don't mix anything with glypho because you'll go back the other way.
Yeah, I couldn't see that in pots, you know, because for a reason or another, all of these pre-emergent herbicides have on their own right some post-emergent activity. So and glyphosate on these populations, because of the level of resistance, really did not go beyond 20% level of control. So when I mixed, whether we sacrificed the putative, you know, achievable extra 5 to 10%, it was still having a better level of efficacy. What I have seen, you know, that very much I like to comment, although it's a sort of an opinion, but a lot of glyphosate is used in conjunction with a spike, you know, and there are some of these spikes that have rates that start to have an activity on grasses. And so in my opinion, you know, the only one that I could see adding much to the glyphosate is Voraxor, you know, to the rate of 100 grams of active per hectare. Of course, Voraxor, the maximum level is 90. But to me, you know, if you use a spike, if you really want to have activity, you should have the maximum registered rate, and the only one that, in my opinion, delivers that is Voraxor. Or everything else, you know, is just dicot type of control. And at the end of the day, I've also seen that yeah, Voraxor has residual activity, so really adds to the IBS type of residual treatment, and so it's a great thing. Everything else, in my opinion, doesn't really deliver what we are asking. Again, the grower is confident, or if it is used to control dicots or get rid of the foliage, so then the subsequent treatment in the double knock is going to reach the ground, fine. But, you know, resistance management is a serious issue, and we need to move on.